Welcome to Insights from the Couch, where real conversations meet real life at midlife.
We're Colette and Laura, two therapists and best friends, walking through the journey right alongside you. Whether you're feeling stuck, restless, or just unsure of what's next, this is a space for honest conversations, messy truths, and meaningful change.
And our Midlife Masterclass is now open. If you're looking to level up, get into action, and make midlife the best season yet, go to insightsfromthecouch.org and join our waitlist. Now let's dive in. Welcome back to Insights from the Couch, everyone. We're your hosts here today, me, Colette Fair, and Laura Bowman, licensed therapists. And we have another wonderful licensed therapist joining us today, Oona Metz, and her brand new book that just launched yesterday, Unhitched, the Essential Divorce Guide for Women. So first of all, welcome, Oona. Before we get into everything to do with divorce, I can't wait. I want to read your bio, but thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time, and I really admire the work that both of you do. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And likewise. So you do really, really good work. And I want everyone to hear about your specialty here. You're a psychotherapist, writer, and speaker specializing in treating women navigating divorce. You're also the author of your brand new book, as I mentioned, Unhitched, the Essential Divorce Guide for Women. And we'll be linking to that in the show notes so you guys can grab your copy. It's available online and in stores everywhere and just launched yesterday, January 13th. And in addition to seeing individual clients, Oona leads 3 weekly divorce support groups in her private practice and has guided hundreds of women through the emotional complexities of divorce. Oona is the founder of the Beacon Group Fellowship, a national group therapy training program to train mental health clinicians to lead divorce groups. Oona lives near Boston with her partner and a handful of pets. I love that. And her young adult children have all flown the coop but return home often. Just like me and Laura, we're all in that same phase of life.
Right. That's why we have the time to write a book. It's because we're not actively parenting. We're still parenting all the time, but in a different way.
It's like a nice phase, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice phase.
Love it.
And not only writing a book, but this is why we have time to be on the podcast, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
I'm so grateful.
Exactly.
So Oona, your book, it's so good. And I couldn't help but thinking as I started it, I wish I had had this book when I got divorced.
Yeah.
And in particular, I think for women at midlife, because midlife divorce comes with its own set of complexities. And this is why I think all of you guys listening are going to get so much out of this today. But you mentioned that there hasn't been a therapist-led divorce book in more than 2 decades. This is shocking, right? I couldn't believe that. And so you really trying to fill the gap here. What did you hope to bring to the table with this book?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I first noticed this when I've been leading these divorce support groups for women for 15 years. And in the old days, I used to refer a book to them called Crazy Time that was written.
It's my favorite.
Yes, and it was written in 1992.
We love that book, and I read and reread it when I was getting divorced. My pages are tear stained and have mascara all over them.
It's a great book, and it was written in 1992. And so, as the years went on, I was like, well, let me see if I can find some updated books. And there are, I'm not going to say there's not great books out there. There's great books out there. And now there's a whole slew of divorce memoirs, which are really helpful. There's a bunch of books about the financial and legal aspects of divorce. And there's some that are for men and women. And then there are some that are for very specific things like infidelity or narcissism. But when I looked at the literature, I was like, there's not a book by a therapist about the emotional journey of divorce for women. How crazy is that? And so I finally decided, I guess I just have to write it.
Filling a real need in the marketplace. I definitely know that women that pass through my practice really are looking for a handbook. So
Yes. They need it. They're hungry for resources. And I think to not feel alone, right? I think so many women feel isolated, even though so many people are going through divorce, but they still feel isolated. And I think they often feel like, are my feelings normal? Like I'm feeling so much. Am I going crazy? No,
Yeah.
you're not going crazy. You're just having a lot of feelings, and that is so normal in that process.
Oh my
Uh,
God, you're so right what you're saying. And I wonder, you also mentioned, and I've found this too as a woman who's divorced and remarried. I mean, first of all, let me just back up and say that reading what you shared about your personal journey, that your parents got divorced when you were
mm,
younger, you grew up
yep.
going back and forth between houses. I mean, I had the
Mhm.
same. I
Yep.
never thought I'd end up divorced as a
Never.
result. It was my
Yep.
fairy tale dream to have the best marriage ever.
Yep.
And then, of course, I ended up divorced.
Yep.
I got divorced when all my friends were getting married for the first time. I was 31. I grew up in New York where people get married a little later. This is 30,
Mhm.
I got divorced 20
Yep.
years ago. I
Yep.
didn't know one person going through a divorce. It was so isolating. And I felt really judged and ostracized as a result. I think even if
Yeah.
people don't ostracise you, you feel like you have this big scarlet letter on instead of
Right.
the A, the big scarlet D.
Yep.
Right. You can feel like a failure. So
Yep.
I'm curious as we dive into this, why do you think divorce is still so stigmatized? Unfairly so.
Mm.
Unfairly so. But why is that when divorce is so common?
Yeah. I mean, we are making progress. I feel like we are making progress, which is good. And I also feel like there is still shame and stigma attached. And I don't think that that's going to change when we're still have such an emphasis on marriage being till death do you part. You
Yes.
know, I just don't think that that's really a good model. Like, what if we had for as long as it really works for everybody in the family? Because sometimes people are married for 20 years and it works really well for 18 of those.
Yep.
And then it doesn't work anymore. And
True.
that's not a failure.
Oh
That's a
my God, I love
success
that.
if you can say, I was married for 18 years and it worked out well, and then we made a change, you know?
Can you just say that again, that definition? Like success, it's a success for as long as it works for every member in the say what you said again. I think that's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Um,
No
um,
pressure, Una, no
can
pressure.
I come on this podcast every day?
But it's
Um,
true. This is the working definition that we need. So even if it's not
right,
the exact words, say that
right,
again.
right. So, so at this, we still think of marriage as the success is until death do you part. But what if we changed that and made marital success is until it's not working anymore for some members of the family?
Yeah.
We-
Yes.
Like, success is stay in it for the longest time you can while it's working, right?
I think we're in the middle of like a cultural shift, though,
Yes.
that we're a part of, but we're still very much in the middle of it, where
Yes.
marriage is not working as an institution for a lot of people. And
Correct.
it really is running its course,
Yep.
but it's still such a foundational brick of the way people, I don't know, tie their identity to things that
Yeah.
I can just see how people are staying in these things that have long outlived their usefulness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know when I don't know when we're gonna get rid of the stigma, but I too see men and women feeling very shameful about it. And then
Mm.
also feeling like they're contaminating their friend groups.
Right.
Like
Right.
it is like a disease that other people in
Yeah.
the group are gonna catch. And so it's
Mm.
how are you helping women like through these hurdles?
I mean, I think one of the solutions is exactly what we're doing right now, which is talking about it. I think it's been something
Amen.
that has been, like the old days when you couldn't even say the word cancer. Some people would say the big C, like it's
Yeah.
Right.
the
Whisper
big
it.
C, right? And I think we're getting better about talking about it. And, that's what I want to do in my support groups. That's what I'm trying to do in this book. That's what you're doing with this podcast is like, let's talk about it because, like as Brene Brown says, we gotta shame likes to live in the dark, right? And if we shine light, shame can't thrive with the light. And so we have to keep talking about it. I think that's one thing. I think also really paying attention to language is helpful. I
Mm,
think I think we're done with like broken family and the
Yeah.
marriage failed. I think we're done with that, but like bringing in new language, like we're restructuring a family. How about that? Rather than keep the marriage failed, we're restructuring the family. We're getting away from the word custody because custody has roots in slavery. We don't own children, you know? And now we're talking about parenting time. What's fair parenting time, not what's your custody arrangement, right?
right, right. It's so true. Even a word like that you don't think
No,
about the
yeah.
roots of has
Yes.
this implicit bias and this really like shaming, outdated
Hmm.
language
Right. Right.
that isn't appropriate. So
Yep.
we're on the cusp, or we're changing it slowly. And one of the ways we're changing it is by talking about it. And this is why I'm always very, to your point, I'm very open as a couples therapist. I
Good.
talk openly about the fact that I'm divorced.
Hmm.
I talk about it to everybody. I refuse to feel ashamed about it. I don't
Hmm.
feel ashamed about it. I actually
Yeah.
think it's the best thing that ever happened to me in
Hmm.
many ways, as was the marriage, because I have my daughters and I learned valuable lessons. Not that I think you have to be divorced to be a good relationship counselor, but so much of what I learned that helps me as a relationship therapist came from failure. And not to
Yes.
say the marriage failure, but
Like.
not knowing how to handle myself in a relationship, not knowing how to cope, finding myself foundering against the rocks, just not knowing what I was doing. And like they say in Crazy Time, that stage of the phoenix rising from the
That's right.
ashes,
That's
it
right.
really is a rebirth. So I
It
think,
is.
particularly for our listeners who are at midlife, many of these women, not all, but many who might be contemplating divorce or have gone through a divorce, or maybe a divorce is on the horizon at midlife. Some of these women have been married for decades, for
Right.
a long time, and it's very, very scary. And we don't really know what's on the around the bend. So, what do you think, as we're normalizing this and really talking about it openly, what do you think women underestimate about the emotional arc of the divorce process or don't understand about it?
I think it's really hard, like so many things, right? It's really hard to know what it's like until you've gone through it. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it's so important to find other people who've gone through it. I mean,
Mhm.
I think people underestimate how hard it is, but also how transformative it can be because it can be so heartbreaking and stressful, in the beginning. And it also can create so much growth and healing and transformation at the end. And it's so hard to know that when you're in the beginning stages, and you might hear that from people and think, well, not me, or I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen it a million times, right? Just people go from their lowest of lows to being so much happier and so much more empowered and learning and growing so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. What makes women, and I want to go through, you talk about these 5 pillars, right? Of
The
like,
5 phases of
yes, the
grief.
5
Yes.
phases. So I definitely want to go into that. But let me just ask you, because Laura and I are working with women going through divorce all the time. What do you see as the difference between the people who get stuck, where the divorce has happened, it's 3 years in the rearview mirror, 5 years, 10 years, and they're still stuck, versus those who thrive and move on and have that transformative experience?
Well, I think there are these 5 phases. And I think if you get stuck in one phase, it can be really hard to get out of that phase, but people need to do the work. I mean, there's grieving
Yeah.
that's evolved, and I think people really need to have a safe place to do that grieving work, whether it's with a therapist or a support group or a clergy member. But I think, or friends or your journal or your yoga practice or whatever it is, I think people really need to do the grieving work. And there are stages to that work.
Yeah. And it's so funny because people hate to be sad. We talk about this a lot in our women's group, and we also talk about it on the podcast, but like sadness and grief is like an invitation, and you
Yeah,
have to kind of go through it
it's
to come out the
necessary.
other side. But
Yep.
people will try to move on very quickly with like lists or plans or a new person.
Right. Distracting themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
let's dive into these phases and tell us a little bit about them and how to maybe not get stuck there.
So the way that I came up with these phases is that as I was writing the book, I thought to myself, gosh, it would be really nice to have a model to present in the book of a kind of a path forward. Because I do think that people in the beginning, especially think, oh my God, I feel terrible and I'm always going to feel terrible. Like this is the worst thing that could have happened to me. I'm always going to feel this way. It's awful. And so I wanted to offer people some hope that like it does get better and real hope, not fake hope, but real hope. And like, what is the path? Like where, because I think it's helpful to be able to chart yourself on the journey. And so I looked at all the literature and really there hasn't been a new kind of model of divorce grief that's been developed. People were really using that old Kubler-Ross um,
Yeah.
stage model of grief, which is, that's a very useful model for some people. It was developed in the 70s for grieving when somebody dies, right? And just for people who don't remember, it's that model that begins with denial and goes through anger and then bargaining and
Bargaining.
then sadness and then
Acceptance.
acceptance,
Yeah.
right? And so, that has some usefulness to it. But I started to think, well, I don't think that quite fits with divorce grief. And so I began to think about my own journey. And then, like, I've worked with hundreds of women who've gone through divorce. So, like, if I were to think about like how they did it, what are all the stages that they went through? Because I see women long term, so I see them through all the stages. And so that's how I came up with this model. And the model really begins with heartbreak. And I think it makes sense, right? Of course, if the divorce is not your choice, if you're not initiating it, it's a big heartbreak. But even if you are initiating it, you've had so many heartbreaks along the way until you make that decision. Like every time you're not seen, every time you're not heard, every time you're criticized in the marriage, every time your spouse doesn't hold up kind of with the agreements that you made as a couple, right?
Yes.
It's heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak until you make the decision, right? And that's a really hard stage. And then I think right after heartbreak comes what I think is oftentimes the longest stage, which is the roller coaster. And that's where you
Yes.
have the roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
You're sad, you're mad, you're relieved, you're angry, you're confused, you're fearful. Sometimes you have all of those feelings in a week. Sometimes you have them all in 1 hour.
Yep.
How long
And
can that stage last?
it can last a long time. And, I think like the Kubler-Ross model, people don't, end one stage on a Monday and start the next stage
Right.
on a Tuesday, right? You go back and forth and, you might be in roller coaster for a while and then think you're leaving roller coaster, but come back in when something happens. And I think the legal system really exacerbates the coaster.
Or a difficult partner where it's like
Yes.
there's no peace and you're
Right.
just constantly thrown back into the dynamics of the marriage. Yeah.
Yep. Or really hard co-parenting
Yep.
can
Yeah.
really make the roller coaster hard. And I think, one of the lovely things that happens in the divorce support group is that we can really talk about the roller coaster of feelings in a really nuanced way. Like people can come in and say, I'm so angry at my ex right now. And then I happened to see them at the soccer game. I realized I missed them,
Yeah.
you know? And to hold both of those things at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Like you can hold the anger and the missing. right at the
Yeah.
exact same time.
Because that's so true. You
So
often are
true.
feeling those two
Yep.
things at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you said that you can be the divorce seeker and still you're going through heartbreak.
Absolutely.
Not just the actual dissolution of the marriage, but the many times your heart was broken along the way as the
Yes.
relationship couldn't or didn't meet your needs.
Yeah.
It is a death. It's a death, and
It
there's a
is.
profound impact. And
Yep.
this roller coaster, I love that you named that stage because that's exactly what it is. Hence the old book, Crazy Time, right? That's
Yes.
really,
Right.
she's
Yep.
speaking to that roller coaster. Your
Yep.
life is imploded.
Yep.
Every day feels different.
Yep.
Everything's changing. You feel all the feelings. You
And there's
miss
so much
them.
uncertainty,
Yes.
right? There's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
Where am I gonna, am I gonna be able to stay in the house? What's the parenting plan gonna be? What's gonna happen with the kids? How much money am I gonna have at the end of this? How much money is my lawyer gonna have at the end of this?
Right. And like,
Right.
will I ever be happy again? Will I find
Yes.
love? Will I
Right.
feel normal? Will people judge me? Am I marked? But I mean, it goes on and on. And we know the brain hates uncertainty even more than grief and sadness.
Oh
It's
my God, I
that.
want the next stage. I want the next.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
What's the
I
next
mean,
thing? What
like,
is
I mean,
that?
Okay,
roller
okay.
coaster.
Good, good, good. All right, ready? The next stage after roller coaster. We got the roller coaster. The next
Yes.
stage
I'm like,
after the
oh,
roller coaster is mending.
Oh, thank
And the
God.
way I picture this is like taking a little needle and thread to those little holes in your heart and being able to stitch it up. And mending is really when you begin, when you when you can begin to make a shift from thinking about your ex all the time and thinking about the divorce all the time to start thinking again about you, what you need. What do you need to start to feel better? You know, Maybe you need to go back to that yoga class. Maybe you need to, start reading books again. Maybe you need to have a weekly walk with your friend on a Friday morning. Like, what is it that you need to start mending your heart? I like to refer to divorce as being in the middle of it as like having the worst part-time job that you could possibly have. It's like you've got the worst boss, you have the worst colleagues. They don't pay you. Actually, you have to pay to go to the job, right? There's no days off. And so in the mending stage, you begin to your jobs kind of slows down and you begin to think about yourself again.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stitching the tiny
Yeah.
holes in your heart, right?
Yeah.
That's so palpable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you can't avoid that stage if you're going to progress. Like, right? That's
Exactly.
inevitable.
Exactly. And that is sometimes where people get stuck is like in that roller coaster where they then don't go to mending and they never really mend their heart. So their heart still has all of these holes in it. And it's very hard to move on if you're not focusing a little bit more on yourself, if you're focusing too much on your ex.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was just going to ask. Because before we get to the next stage, right, I was going to say, what is keeping people stuck in roller coaster? A lot of what I see is being stuck in like victim mindset, preoccupied with anger, unreleased anger toward the ex, preoccupied with the ex period.
Yep.
Anything you would add to that you see a lot in your groups and your work with women?
I think one of the major tasks in mending is refocusing on yourself. And it's also about the next stage. And the next stage is letting go. And
Mm.
as I said, sometimes people need to do the letting go before they do the mending. And sometimes people do the mending and then they can do the letting go. So again, you don't necessarily have to go through these stages exactly in order. But the letting go phase is also incredibly important for grief, right? Because if you hold on, if your focus is always on your ex, we know like that's where your mind is going to go and that's where your feelings are going to go. And it's going to be really hard to move on.
I can imagine though, and I've seen it in my own practice of like situations that feel patently unfair. Like you've
Yes.
been left for someone else.
Yep.
You have been left with like acute financial distress
Yep.
and like your life has changed
Yep.
like really quickly. So, like,
Yes.
it's very hard to let go in some of those scenarios. You feel
Yes.
wronged. You
Yep.
feel like everything is unfair. So it's like I can imagine that that's makes it very hard to get unstuck
Yep.
sometimes.
And I think you need to have a good amount of time to rail against that, to say, this is so unfair and I hate it and it's awful and he or she did this terrible thing to me and there's no consequences and it's unfair, it's enough, and to have somebody who can listen and say, yeah, you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, you have to say, yeah, it is unfair and you need to let go. Like you can keep on that beat, but if you keep on that beat, then you're giving power, even more power to the other person,
And
right?
you're
So,
robbing yourself. You're
yes,
robbing, it's the drinking poison expecting
yes,
other people to die.
yes.
I think that's as I listen to you, I know that that was so key for me
Yep.
that I did feel that my divorce was unfair. I was left in
Hmm.
financial, like
Hmm.
dire straits.
Yeah.
There was another woman in the picture, not as an affair partner, but like within 10 seconds, I wasn't even like dry from the shower of the
Uh-huh.
separation, much
Uh-huh.
less divorce. And there was
Yeah.
another woman living in my house
Yep.
mothering my children. I like to say when I give talks about this that my ex-husband replaced me with a new woman as if he were simply replacing a battery.
Yep.
And we know when we talk about heterosexual relationships in particular that men often, it's a cliche, but it's true, men really struggle to be alone. They're not as likely to go to therapy, to do the work. They don't typically historically have as much of a network of friends.
Yep.
And so, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, that's
Hmm.
all I can speak to from personal experience,
Sure.
that you may be the one who is like your ex moves on very quickly. Sometimes you're left for that person.
Yeah.
And it can feel so unfair, but I think my own ability finally to say exactly what you said, you know what, this situation sucks. So I had to really come to a place of acceptance and let go and not say, oh, this was okay. No, this sucks. And I choose to rebuild my life and reclaim my sense of self and reinvest. And in my case, it led to a whole career. So I'm
Right.
curious, do you think that letting go, that it's necessary to forgive to do that?
It depends on what your definition of forgiveness is.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I think it's really important to forgive yourself,
Mm,
you know? And if somebody has really caused you pain, I think I I I like the definition of forgiveness where you're not saying what you did is okay.
Yeah.
You're not saying, "I want you to do that again."
hell no.
No, but you may be able to, if the definition of forgiveness is more like, I understand the context of why you did what you did, and I'm not going to spend energy being angry anymore about that, then yes, I think that's, and I don't think it has to be spoken out loud
Yeah.
or
Like,
communicated to the other person. I think it can be between you and you.
yeah, it's a release. It's like you're like
Yes.
letting yourself out of that,
Yes.
where you're not punishing a person or holding yourself in judgment with that person and
Yeah.
freeing yourself from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely on that definition of forgiveness.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that definition. I think that's the perfect definition, right? It doesn't have any kind of this was okay or do it again. And I think that's where people can get stuck on
Mhm.
forgiveness. And of course, there can
Right.
be religious components for certain people. But
Yep.
I just like to bring that out because people feel so differently about it. And to say
Mhm.
that if your definition of forgiveness hasn't jived with that, you can still let go without forgiving, or you can
Yep.
re narrate and reframe what forgiveness means, but you've gotta find a way to let go and put your energy back into you.
Yep. And again, when you were saying earlier, Laura, about how hard it is to let go, it
Mm.
is really hard to let go. And there are so many things to let go of. And so I would encourage people, like, how about this? If you're like obsessed all the time with the other person and with the divorce, like, can you schedule breaks for yourself? Could you say like, okay, from to 8:30 in the morning, I'm not going to think about my divorce or my
Yeah.
ex. Like, just build it up little by little by little. Again, it's not like, okay, on Tuesday, I'm obsessed with my divorce and my ex, and on Wednesday, I've let go, right? It's
Yeah.
not that easy. It is a kind of more
Baby
gradual
steps.
thing to do, and there's so many things to let go of, right? You have to it's not just letting go of your ex. You're letting go of your identity as a married person, your
Mm.
identity as a spouse. You're letting go of your identity of being part of an intact family, you know, and letting go of also the narrative, right? Having a shared narrative. And that's a tough one for people. People really, like you were saying, Colette, it sounds like there were a couple different narratives happening around your divorce,
For
and
sure.
I bet that
And there
that
still
was
are.
hard for you. That was hard, right? You want people to know, you wanna have the same narrative about what happened, but
Yeah.
That's so
really
true.
helping people to let go of your need to have the same shared narrative as your ex and as your community.
I think that goes for families in general. I mean, I
Yes.
think like siblings, parents, everybody is going to have their own narrative, and can you let them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that goes everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, because otherwise you can really like be hijacked by the obsessive need to try to control that. And I love that you give tactical stuff too, because so many of these things we're talking about are a process and the
Yeah.
emotions subside when they subside. Everybody's different, but help yourself in ways you can. And there are some small strategic things you can do. Like if your ex is on your mind all the time, schedule a little period where you're not going to think about it and build on that. Right?
That's
Like we've
right.
got to take some baby steps.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely, and I think really investing in other things, like figuring out and which brings me to the next stage, right? So
Yes, the final stage.
the final stage is moving on, and moving on, it doesn't mean you forget you're divorced, and certainly you don't forget if you're co-parenting, right? So,
Hell
the
no.
divorce is always gonna be part of your story, whether it's 1 year ago or 20 years ago, it's still part of your story, but moving on is really when you make a conscious decision and an intention that you're gonna invest in something else. You're gonna invest in a new job, a new career, a new relationship, a new yoga practice, a new hobby, a new, I'm gonna read, 25 books this year. Whatever the thing is that you wanna invest in, that you're really saying to yourself, "I'm going to take this energy because it takes a lot of energy to get divorced. So when you get done, take that energy and invest it in something else."
Mm,
Yeah. Mm.
your new identity, your new self, whatever it
Yeah.
is. And this is where the healing really comes when
Yeah,
you are back to the place where you can invest in yourself. But I'm really glad we're speaking to the fact that it does take a while. You really can't short circuit this. You
that's
are
right.
not going to be totally okay after a divorce, even if you sought the divorce,
Yep.
a couple months later. It's just not realistic. It is the death of a relationship, of identity, of shared narratives. And like any ending, even though it's okay and it doesn't mean you've failed, it's going to require sitting with some difficult emotions,
Mhm.
riding the roller coaster before you
Yep.
can get to like mending and letting go and moving on.
Absolutely.
And Una, just to like, you've seen so many women in divorce groups. Like, what are the mistakes, the like pitfalls where you're just like, oh my gosh, like this woman's gonna inadvertently spend so much more time suffering
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
maybe choices that another person ends up making.
One of them is, like, not being able to let go, and we really work a lot in the group about the letting go, but that constant kind of focus back on the divorce and on that kind of victimhood is one thing that prevents people from moving on, and I think another big one is if they move too quickly to distraction. Distraction in good doses can be an
Yeah.
effective way of dealing with overwhelming feelings, but if you're doing too much distraction, some people are like, "Okay, we decided to get separated yesterday, and today I'm on the dating apps."
Yes.
It's too soon. And dating apps can become very consuming and very distracting. While I like people to be able to invest in other things eventually, you first have to feel the feelings,
Yes.
right? And there's so many feelings. And if you skip that step, you end up getting stuck, I think.
And then you'll go through a breakup. You'll go meet somebody and you'll go through a breakup. And then you're like, have to grieve that breakup
Yeah.
and the marriage.
Yeah.
That was me. That was me.
Ah.
No, listen, at the time, I thought, first of all, I was 31. I didn't know what I didn't know. I'd never been in an adult relationship because I married the guy I dated from 18. So I had no
Oh.
dating experience. I wasn't a therapist. I didn't even really get therapy,
Mhm.
so I had no idea what I was doing. I had no divorced friends. But I thought I took such a long time. This is comical, you guys. I was single for 2 months after my divorce before I started dating the next guy.
Uh-huh.
And then that
Uh-huh.
relationship lasted for 2+ years, 3+ years if you count all the back and forth until I could
Mhm.
finally let it die.
Yep.
And then when that ended, I was alone with myself for the first time, and I didn't have the emotional scaffolding to handle it.
Yep.
I didn't know how to be alone. I was grieving so many layers of grief and
Mhm.
having to confront myself in the mirror. It was overwhelming. And I really hit a rock bottom emotionally, existentially. I was coping by self medicating, drinking too much alcohol, smoking cigarettes. This is a long
Yep.
time ago. And I didn't want to take psychotropic drugs because I thought that was weak. Again, this is a long time ago. I didn't really think I needed therapy because I had a
Mhm.
very like, I should be okay, I'm strong kind of
Mhm. Mm.
mentality.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't a therapist yet, so I didn't have access to all that I know now. But I made it harder on myself. And I have a
Mhm.
lot of compassion for my younger self. I don't judge myself at all.
Yep.
I
Yep.
just wish I could like take that young person and hug her and give her
Yeah.
some wise advice, which is why I think your book is so important. Because even
Mhm.
if you're not that young and inexperienced, it's one thing to say feel the feelings. It's another thing when you are feeling the feelings and they are overwhelming and there are 18 different pieces. And in some cases, you're still trying to parent, in a lot of cases, young children who need
Yep.
you. It's a tsunami.
It is a tsunami. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you were doing the best you could back
I
then,
was. I was.
and you learned, and that's the important thing. You learned and you grew and you transformed, and here you are now helping other people, which
Yes.
is amazing.
Yes. And now I can say that I'm grateful. Like, I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't choose
Sure.
it,
Yep.
but I'm grateful for the experience
That
and
you
the,
went
the
through it.
new self that came out on the other side. And
Yeah.
this is why I think you doing so many groups, it really makes sense to me. Laura and I have done a divorce group for women too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of those things that obviously I encourage people to do individual therapy, but I think this is one of those things that really heals in group more than anything. What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if people could only choose one thing, either individual or group, I think group, for
Yeah.
divorce is so important because it's so great to get to hear other people's perspectives and to see other people. Like one of the things I love is people being at different stages of the game in my group. And the people who are further ahead offer so much hope for the people who are just starting out, right? They can see them and be like, oh, wow, someday I'll be like that. And it's hard to get that in individual therapy,
I
right?
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And the people who are further along can look at the people who are just coming up and think that that gives them a great sense of perspective too. Like,
Right.
oh, I remember when I was at that
Yeah.
stage. I remember when I was in the heartbreak stage and wow, now I've really come a long way. So I just think women can give each other so much wonderful support through that group experience.
I wonder if resources for men, because I work with a lot of men too. I
Uh-huh.
wonder if we are supporting our men the way we're supporting women.
Mhm. Think that men are more likely to go to short-term groups than long-term. Like, my groups are
Yeah.
long-term, they're ongoing, and I think having groups for men that are a little bit more short-term might appeal to them more. I mean, they need to be talking about this too, right?
Yes. And they
Yes.
really need those skills to like metabolize the loss and transform it into something useful, as opposed to just unconsciously going out and kind of recreating the same
Right.
dynamics and never getting through anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up too, Laura, because I think that's one of the values of doing the longer term work is that you can look at your patterns. And
Yep.
even if you were left and you were blindsided and you were cheated on, and it's as unfair as can be, when you're ready, there is a lot of value in unpacking the dynamics of the relationship.
Yep.
What role did you contribute, even to just what wasn't
Yep.
working? There's always
That's right.
something, it's a dynamic. What do
Sure.
you want in your next relationship? Like, if we
Mhm.
can be more intentional and learn from these
Absolutely.
it's the greatest crucible of growth and learning. So I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So Una, if you want people to take one thing from your book, like if you would want somebody to walk away with one crystal nugget, I know there's so many good ones. What
Mm.
would that be?
Can I give you 2, please?
Yes, yes, really. You can give us
Okay.
three. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
whatever
So
you want.
one thing I would say is don't do this alone.
Yeah.
Like find your people, whether it's a therapist or a support group or a friend or my book. My book is a companion. You can put it in your pocket, you can put it in your earbuds, but don't do it by yourself because it's hard. And the second thing I would say is like it does get better. And I know if you're in the beginning, it's going to be so hard to believe that, but give me a call in a year and let me know that actually you were right. I do feel better. You'll feel better in a year, you'll feel much better in 2 years, and you'll feel fantastic in 3, right?
Oh, that's great. I
Um,
love that. I love a timeline.
yeah, yeah,
No, I
yeah.
want to go through another divorce. No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding. You made
And
me
I
feel
think
so awful.
the other thing I wanna say about my book is I have been talking about it a lot, which is great, and one of the things we've been talking a lot about is this 5-phase model, but I just wanna let people know that there's that's one chapter of the book, and there's so much more in the book, and it is filled with exercises that help you reflect on your marriage and your divorce and your identity, and it is filled also with tons of stories of other people who've gone through divorce because I know how isolating it can be to go through divorce. And so, if you don't have people around you, or if you only have a few and you want to read about how other people got through it, there's tons of stories in my book about other people going through it. So
Yeah, and the
helpful.
stories are really good. It's so normalizing and it's so helpful when you don't feel alone, but you can also see yourself reflected in these
Yes.
stories. It's
Yeah.
so rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, please tell everybody how they can find you, the
Yes.
book, your divorce group, all that good stuff.
Great. The easiest way to find me is on my website. It's www.oonametz, that's OONAMETZ.com. And I also have a ton of free resources. So if you can't afford the book or if you have the book but you want more resources, there's a ton of free resources on my website. And the book is being sold everywhere. It's at Amazon and Target and your library, of course. And if you don't want to be seen reading the book, it is out in audio as well. So you can listen to it in your earbuds and nobody will know.
There you go.
And we'll
Mhm.
have all of this in the show notes too, so that you
Right.
guys can grab your copy. And if you're not going through a divorce we're about to, maybe you have a friend who could
Yes.
really benefit from this. I just want to throw out a final word. Reach out to your friends who are divorced or going through a divorce. It's so hard. And when somebody dies, everyone from the neighborhood comes with their casseroles or whatever, especially down here. Casseroles aren't so common in the Northeast, but everybody comes and surrounds you with community. But when you get divorced, people tend to go, "Oh, you're
Forget.
contagious," and they stay
Yeah.
away. Reach out to people. You guys, I could cry thinking of it. You could be the one person that
Yep.
really helps someone feel less alone today.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
In the Northeast, we bring a lasagna or soup.
Yes,
There you go. There you
exactly.
go.
I'm Italian. I agree.
Yes.
Bring a lasagna. But so
Bring a
bring the
lasagna.
lasagna and call people,
Yes.
invite them out. It
Yes.
will cost you nothing to just,
Yep.
you don't even have to talk about the divorce. Just give
Yep.
somebody a
Yeah.
little bit of a lifeline of
Yep.
your company, a listening ear, and a little bit of support. So
Yep.
thank you for writing this book.
Aw,
Honestly,
I'm gonna get it for my bookshelf. I'll put it right next to Crazy
great.
me
Time.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
And I'll be
Yeah.
recommending it to clients for sure. It's a really, really good book and it is a companion and it will give you so much useful information. So
Mm.
thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved having our conversation.
Me too. And everyone go grab your copy now. The book just launched yesterday. You're going to love it. And thank you all for listening again to Insights from the Couch. We hope you got some great insights from our couch today. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please write us a review so that we can get the word out to women and people everywhere about the kind of topics we talk about here. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.